In the summer of 1764, something entered the forests of southern France. Not a wolf. Wolves were known in France. Wolves had been hunted, tracked, documented, and killed for centuries. The people of the Gévaudan region knew what wolves looked like. They knew how they moved. They knew how they killed. What entered those forests in 1764 was not a wolf. The first victim was a young woman named Jeanne Boulet, 14 years old, found in a field on the first day of July. The animals around her were untouched. Whatever had come for her had come only for her. It was the beginning of 3 years that southern France has never fully recovered from. Between 1764 and 1767, something killed between 60 and 100 people in the province of Gévaudan. The exact number is disputed. Some historians say 60, some say closer to 100. The uncertainty itself tells you something, that in a period before precise record-keeping, in a rural province where some deaths may have gone unreported, something was moving through the landscape and taking people with a frequency that made accurate counting difficult. This was not random predation. This was systematic. The creature, whatever it was, demonstrated behaviors that no known animal displayed. It targeted humans specifically. When livestock were present, it ignored them completely and went directly for the people. It attacked in daylight as readily as at night. It demonstrated what witnesses described as an almost deliberate quality, as if it was choosing, selecting, deciding. Multiple witnesses survived encounters and gave descriptions that were recorded by local officials and eventually by the royal court itself, because the situation had become so severe that King Louis XV became personally involved in what was happening in Gévaudan. Their descriptions were consistent in ways that troubled everyone who heard them. The creature was large, much larger than any wolf on record. Witnesses described it as the size of a calf or a young horse, far beyond the dimensions of any wolf species documented anywhere in Europe at that time. Its legs were described as unusually long. Its chest was broad and deep. It moved differently from a wolf, with a gait that some witnesses described as more upright than a typical four-legged animal. Its head was the detail that appeared in every account, wide, flat across the top, with a long snout that ended in a jaw of extraordinary power. Witnesses who survived direct contact described the crushing force of the bite as unlike anything a wolf could produce. People were not bitten and released in the way a predator tests prey. They were seized, and the skulls were crushed. The ears were small. This detail was consistent across separate accounts given by people who had not spoken to each other. Small ears that lay flat against the head. Its color was reddish-brown, sometimes described as carrying a dark stripe along its back. This was not what a wolf looked like. The king sent his finest hunters. The first was François Antoine, the royal gun-bearer and lieutenant of the hunt, one of the most experienced hunters in France. He arrived in Gévaudan in June of 1765 with a team of professionals and explicit orders from Louis XV to end the killings. Antoine hunted the region for months. In September of 1765, he killed a large wolf, an unusually large wolf, enormous by normal standards. He declared the beast dead. He had the carcass stuffed and sent to Versailles. The court celebrated. The killings continued. Within weeks of Antoine's announcement, the attacks resumed. The creature was still there. Whatever he had killed, and he had killed something real. It was not the thing that was hunting the people of Gévaudan. The killings continued. The king sent more hunters, more soldiers. Entire regiments swept through the forests with orders to kill everything. Thousands of animals were killed across the region during those 3 years in an attempt to find and destroy whatever was responsible. The killings continued. By 1767, the province of Gévaudan had been living in absolute terror for 3 years. People did not walk alone. Children were kept indoors. Shepherds refused to take their flocks into the fields. The fields themselves began to fail because the people who worked them would not go out into open ground. The economic damage to the region was catastrophic. The psychological damage was worse. And then, on the 19th of June, 1767, a local hunter named Jean Chastel went into the forest alone. He came back with a large animal. The attacks stopped, completely, immediately, finally. What Chastel killed was examined by witnesses and recorded. It was large, larger than a wolf. Its stomach contents were examined and found to contain human remains. And then something strange happened. The body disappeared. By the time it reached any authority capable of conducting a proper examination, the carcass had decomposed beyond identification. The summer heat had done its work. Whatever Chastel had killed, and the attacks did stop after he killed it, was never properly examined by anyone qualified to determine with certainty what species it belonged to. This is where the history ends, and where the questions begin. Because what Chastel killed has never been satisfactorily identified. The most conventional explanation offered by historians is that it was a large wolf, possibly a wolf hybrid, possibly an animal that had been raised in captivity and released. An animal without natural fear of humans, conditioned from birth to associate human beings with food rather than danger. Some researchers have pointed to the possibility of a hyena. Exotic animals were not unknown in 18th century France. Wealthy nobles kept private menageries and escapes were occasionally documented. A striped hyena would explain some of the physical descriptions. The unusual gait, the crushing jaw force, the reddish coloring with a dark dorsal stripe. Others have suggested something that science has not yet fully classified. Wolves and large dogs produce hybrid offspring that can grow to extraordinary sizes and display behavioral patterns that neither parent species exhibits. Something bred in a combination that has not been studied. Something that fell outside every category the hunters and naturalists of 1765 had available to them. And then there's the other explanation. The one that the people of Gévaudan themselves gave to what was happening in their fields and forests. They called it the Loup Garou, the French werewolf, not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. A genuine belief held by people who had survived the attacks, who had seen the creature, who had found the bodies of their neighbors and their children. People who looked at what was happening around them and concluded that whatever was responsible was not entirely a natural animal. The legend of the Loup Garou in French folklore predates the beast of Gévaudan by centuries. It describes a creature that moves between states, that is human in one moment and something else in another. That cannot be killed by ordinary means. That selects its victims with something that looks uncomfortably like intelligence. Jean Chastel, the man who finally killed the beast, was himself a figure of local suspicion. There were rumors, whispered accounts that went unrecorded in official documents but survived in the oral history of the region, that Chastel had a relationship with the beast, that he knew what it was, that the reason it stopped when he killed it was not coincidence, that the reason no one else could stop it was that no one else knew its secret. None of this was ever proven. None of it was ever disproven. What remains is this. Between 1764 and 1767, something moved through the forests of Gévaudan and killed between 60 and 100 people. The finest hunters in France could not stop it. The Royal Army could not find it. Every explanation offered by science and history leaves questions unanswered. A local man with a silver bullet ended it and took whatever he knew about what it really was to his grave. The forests of Gévaudan are still there. They look exactly the same as they did in 1764. And no one in that region, not even now, walks through them alone after dark.